How you doing, guys? We got a lot to go over tonight. Pat is hopefully on his way. I'm having a little trouble getting in touch with him, so I'm gonna wait to really start up for a few more minutes. You see the light coming in, it's destroying my face right now. Sorry about that, but we're gonna give it a couple minutes and see if Pat is able to hop in here. He was hoping to be able to. He wasn't 100% positive, so I'm gonna give him a few minutes and then we'll get going. If you guys have any questions in the meantime, feel free to put them in the chat and I can kind of answer about whatever you guys want to talk about real quick. And if Pat doesn't join in the next couple minutes, we'll just get going. All right, so Moxic asked, people actually still like Jimmy G? I think he is horrid, and I'm hoping Pat can come in and defend and play the other side of this for me, because I am not a Jimmy G fan personally. I wasn't really a huge Jimmy G fan when he was here in the first place. He is a lower tier quarterback who, when you factor in the system that the Patriots run, his familiarity with it, maybe you get kind of that like late 20s type quarterback instead of like a bottom tier quarterback. But especially when you're trading for that contract, I think it's a non-starter. If they want to bring him in, if he were to get cut, then it could, in theory, work. You know, I would be fine if they brought him in on a cheaper similar to Cam Newton type deal to battle it out with Cam. You know, I wouldn't hate it, but I would also be completely fine if he was a free agent and signs somewhere else as well. And I'm right underneath the skylight right now, so you're going to see the sun changing all over my face right now. So I apologize for that. But since he's the big winner today, can get Chase Sewell or anybody they want now, right? Yeah, I think that this is kind of why Cincy was always in a good spot, because Miami moving down from 3 made way too much sense not to happen eventually. And now, still a month or so out, we know that it's coming. They were already probably in position to get one of the two, and at least one of those two or Pitts they were guaranteed, and now they'll likely have their top pick. It wouldn't be a surprise if the 4th overall selection becomes the trading spot for whoever's QB4, which we'll get into when we really start to dissect these trades. But yeah, since he comes out of this looking great, they might even be a position where if they like Chase and Sewell and maybe Pitts similarly, they can look to trade back if that QB4 doesn't go to Atlanta, or even if they do and someone has QB5 in that similar spot, that maybe they can even trade back a few picks, gain an asset, and still come away with someone that they were going to pick at 5. So yeah, since he's sitting pretty right now for sure. All right, so let's get going. If Pat is able to hop in, I'll bring him in here and we'll get his thoughts on it as well. But he's a busy guy, so no big deal if he doesn't. So a couple big trades happened today, obviously with the draft with draft picks today, both involving Miami. And the reason we're talking about it on a Patriots stream is because I think that this has pretty significant ramifications for the Patriots. So let's dig into it in case you missed it to this point. Miami sent the 3rd overall pick to San Francisco for the 12th overall pick, 2022 first from San Francisco, their 2022 third, which is the compensatory pick for losing their GM. I forget his name off the top of my head, and their 2023 first as well. And it looks like Pat will be hopping in a second, by the way. The second trade that we saw was Miami then flipping that 12th overall pick and their own 2022 first to Philadelphia for the 6th overall pick. So the final haul that we see here is that Miami gives the 3rd overall pick and their 2022 first, and they receive the 6th overall pick, San Francisco's 1st and 3rd next year, and their 2023 first. San Francisco gave up 12 and those haul of picks to Miami to get the 3rd overall pick, and Philadelphia gets the 6th overall, or gave up the 6th overall pick and receives 1.12 from originally from San Francisco and Miami's 2022 first. So quick thoughts on the actual trade before we dive into how it impacts the Patriots. I kind of like it for all sides, as long as the 49ers take not Mac Jones pretty much. I think Philadelphia is the biggest winner, honestly, because at 6, you're probably looking at your 2nd to 3rd choice out of Sewell, Chase, or maybe even Pitts. They still have Dallas Goedert, so that fit doesn't make as much sense. Maybe wide receiver 2, Smith or Waddle. And we'll pull Pat in here real quick. Hey, Pat, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, man?
So I was just finishing up a thought real quick about how I think Philadelphia was the big winner of these trades today, because if you look at it, they're outside of Chase, Sewell, and the top quarterbacks. That next tier of guys is pretty deep. It kind of runs from the 6th overall player through the 14th or 15th overall player.
Right.
You're looking at a situation where you're not getting. You would assume that the Bengals are taking one of Chase or Sewell. You would assume the Falcons might be in play for one of them or Pitts. So you're already looking at your last choice of that group. So you're trading out. You're giving up on that top tier guy, but you're adding a first for a team that's in a that needs to start a hard rebuild with their young quarterback. And they're still in that range for that next tier guy. Say if they wanted to go Sewell, they can still get a Rashawn Slater or Christian Darrisaw. If they want Mark Chase, they're still in a position for Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman type. They don't really lose too much in terms of that tier of talent that they were already likely to be picking from. And they add a first for next year where if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy, now they have ammo to move up again. If he is the guy, they have ammo to start building around him.
Right. No, I mean, it's a good point. I still think Miami killed it. If I would assume, now I don't know, but I would assume that Miami looks at it and says, okay, like we wanted to move back to 6. Philly said no, essentially, right? So we said, okay, well, fine. You want to move back, Philly? Great. We'll go back and then we'll come back up. Right. And essentially what they did is they added a free 3rd round pick in 2022 and a free 1st round pick in 2023. And if they believe that they can be better than San Francisco next year, they pick swap with San Francisco next year.
Right. That's the big part. That's the big key for Miami's side of this here. I only talked about Philadelphia so far, but Miami's it's a win for Miami regardless, because you're only moving back a couple spots and you're getting an extra 1st and a 3rd. And if you are better than San Francisco, then like you said, you're moving up in the draft again next year too, which is that is supposed to be almost a concession here that gets made for trading up, and it's still a win for you.
Right. And so
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say even if they're worse than San Francisco though, if they're worse than San Francisco, so now they're moving back a little bit, but they're still moving back up to get that top tier talent. Or if a quarterback were to fall and maybe that changes their mind on Tua a little bit, or if they want to go get Deshaun Watson, they now still have that top tier pick where 12 is a little bit less enticing. 6 is still in that range of a top tier talent that could sell Houston on maybe moving him again, assuming whatever plays out with Watson, that's all up in the air right now. But
no, and that's the thing, is that who knows what's going to happen, right? But it is fascinating to see kind of what's there, and I think Miami killed it, really, honestly. And for a Miami, in my opinion, now, like I just think Miami just dominated. And again, where do they go at 6? What do they do at 6? And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and this is Moxic. I believe it's Moxic brought this up. The fourth and 5th pick just instantly doubled in value. Yes and no. Like, yes, San Fran gave up a ridiculous amount to move up. And then Miami went from 12 to 6 and gave up a 1st round pick next year. And that was it. So, and I know they gave up like 120 and got back 150, but like whatever, like, you know what I mean? They traded an early 4th and got back an early 5th. Like, okay, fine. Fine. Right. The point being, though, is that I still think you could go from 15 to 4 or 5 and not give up much more than your 1st round pick next year, because,
let's dig into that a little bit, because that was a point that I wanted to bring up as well. I'm a little bit, I lean more towards the other side of this than you, where if you're moving up from 12 to 6 and moving up from, like, even though it's really not a big gap, the top 5 just has a stigma, and especially if you're moving up. Miami presumably, or not even presumably, but doesn't have to. It's not obvious that they're moving up to go get a quarterback.
Right.
When teams know that you're coming up to get a quarterback, as the Patriots would be, that price instantly jacks up. And when you're looking at moving up to say 4 instead, they're going to be comparing it against what the 3rd overall pick just got to come from 12, which is a similar jump. You're moving up even a little bit more than that. For a slightly worse pick than what the difference between 12 and 6 is, because that gap, in the 1st round, each subsequent pick exponentially drops in value to a certain extent, where in the later rounds, it kind of flattens out. But in that 1st round, the difference between 3 and 6 is pretty massive, and 4 and 6 is still pretty large.
Which is a good point. I will say though, the good news for the Patriots, and this is the only thing, if you wanted them to trade up for a quarterback, the good news for the Patriots is that there were a lot of question marks about Miami anyways. I had assumed that Miami was trading out because I said, well, they're not taking a quarterback at 3, right? And if they are, then they're trading Tua somewhere, right? So like, what are they going to do? So I assumed they were trading out anyways. That's what happened. The 2 teams that you had to compete with, realistically, for a quarterback, the 2 teams you had to compete with were San Francisco and Carolina. Those are the 2 teams you have to worry about.
Denver is a wild card in there.
And Denver's a wild card, right?
But they're kind of in the same boat as the Patriots, where you're not expecting them to make a move.
Right. And so now you look at it and say, okay, 4 is Atlanta. Should Atlanta take a quarterback? I think they should. Will they take a quarterback? I don't know if they will.
I'd be surprised.
5 is Cincinnati. They're obviously not taking a quarterback. And the question is, will they want to trade it or not? I think if Penny Sewell's on the board there, I think the fan base in Cincinnati would go ballistic if Sewell was on the board at 5 and they didn't take him. So I think Sewell is. I think you can write him in Sharpie there. As long as he doesn't go at 4, he's going at 5.
And the Bengals are historically a team that doesn't really trade in the first round of the draft. Right. They're usually picking where they're picking. So in theory, they could trade back. I mentioned this before you hopped on. They in theory could be in a position to trade back and still get Sewell, Chase, or maybe Kyle Pitts if they were to say move back with Carolina. But they aren't a team that historically does that, and I don't think with Sewell specifically they're in a situation to do it.
Right. So he changed his screen name, but he's changed his screensaver, profile picture, or whatever. But he said Carolina's probably gearing up trade right now, and they might be. They're the only team you have to compete with, right?
I wanted to bring that up too.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say the thing about Miami is that you look at it and say, okay, Miami's at 6. They're not drafting a quarterback, more than likely. So then 7, that's the spot. 7 is the spot. See, Carolina, here's the thing about Carolina to 4. Carolina to 4, it's the same situation. We're talking about the Patriots to 3, right? We're talking about the NFC South, right? Are you going to trade that pick to your division rival and let them take the quarterback of the future, right? And if you do that, you're going to want an insane haul from them. Because now you're saying, hey, they think this guy can be the next guy. And what if he turns out to be that guy and we just gave him to him, right? And so I think that Carolina to 4, I don't know if that's realistic. Now, Carolina to 5, certainly possible. Carolina to 6 even. Could Miami trade back again and pick up more? I could certainly see that happening. To me, 7 is the spot. 7's the spot. If you're going to go up and get a guy, to me, 7 is where you need to think about getting to. And if you can get there, man, I mean, you never know, right? You get to 7, that quarterback could drop all the way back to 7, and now you're drafting Trey Lance at 7, and you give up your first round pick next year to go up and get him. And then to me, that's a no-brainer for the Patriots.
See, we were on the same wavelength there with Carolina and Atlanta connection, except that I think that locks in 4 to being if you're the Patriots and you want to go get a quarterback, you got to go get to 4 now. Because if Carolina doesn't get Deshaun, and with everything going on with Deshaun, not to say he's guilty, not to say he's innocent, it's tough to see a team. It's tough to see this clearing out in time that a team would be comfortable trading for him before the draft at this point.
Right.
So if Carolina doesn't want to risk waiting out the draft for Deshaun, then your window is now, because the fear was that they would go up to 3, and now you're bidding against San Francisco and Denver for 4. Because, like you said, I can't see Atlanta trading with Carolina there unless they're coming up. They know who they're coming up for, which I can't believe Carolina would tell them. And they are so strongly believing in their own scouting that pick isn't going to hit, that they're comfortable taking that chance.
Right.
I don't see that happening. So now you almost have a free window to go negotiate at 4 and keep that price from becoming absurd the way that this price for the 49ers borders on absurd. Unless if Denver isn't interested in moving up, you might be the only bidder for 4, and you might be able to get it a little bit cheaper than you probably should.
Right. I agree. And it's interesting, man. Like, and you know what's crazy about it? And I want to try to, no, I didn't save it. The Tunsil trade. So that pick obviously was the Tunsil pick. The Tunsil trade, man, and this is like a Patriots level trade when you're like, oh my God. So here we go. Here it is. Field Yates. The Laramie Tunsil trade for Miami has now netted them the 26th pick in the 2020 draft, the 12th, 36th, and 102nd picks in the 2021 draft, plus a 2022 first round pick and a 2023 first round pick. Holy Christ. That's
absolute haul.
4 first round picks. 4 first round picks for one guy. That's where it's like, okay, that's what Bill does. Bill does. Right. He turns all those assets into more assets. And you're like, oh my God. That's like, it reminds me of 07 when they turned 29, which was 27, wherever they were, where San Fran drafted Staley, right? And they turned that into Moss, Mayo, and then the third round pick obviously was Sean Crable. So that ended up, falling flat. But even still, it's one of those things where it's like, you're looking at it like, oh my God, 4 first round picks for one guy who's like good, but like not that good, nobody's that good. I mean, like really, so it's,
especially not Laramie Tunsil, who's, a solid tackle, top 10 left tackle in the league, but he's not like the best tackle in the league or anything like that.
Right. And so that's the interesting thing. Yeah. So we'll see, and this is where, but now, all right. You want to move away from the draft and talk about Jimmy G, or you?
Yeah. So let's. We haven't really touched on how this works out for San Francisco real quick. So let's talk into that. And I have one more kind of thing that I want to bring up for the Patriots in terms of the draft.
Yes.
Where first of all, for San Francisco, this is a lot, but they're never going to be in a situation again where they could go up and get a franchise guy for Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan's too good of a coach. The roster's too competent. Jimmy G, for all that I'm going to take away from him in a minute, is a competent enough quarterback that if they were to roll with him for another year, they're probably not picking this high again. They have extra assets right now because of losing their Robert Saleh and their assistant GM, whose name I still forget. They have 2 extra third-round picks this year and next year, 1 each this year, next year because of that. So they're in a unique position to go up and get a guy in what also happens to be a really deep quarterback draft. So the only way, this is a lot for them, the only way that I laugh at this move is if they take Mac Jones, which seems to be a popular thing that people who might know something have been throwing out there since this trade happened. If they go up and get Mac Jones, that's an absolute win for the Patriots because now it doesn't matter if you don't get to 4. You have 2 more spots to go get the 2 guys that you've been linked to already anyway. If they aren't idiots and go Justin Fields, let's say, or Trey, either one of them. If they go, let's assume Wilson's going 2 for now. If they go Fields or Lance, that again furthers that. Maybe we've heard the Patriots be linked to Fields and Lance so far, but we don't know if that's they like Lance, they love Fields, other way around, whatever. They love both. If they don't love both, now you're probably locked into your last choice of the top 4 quarterbacks. Right. You're getting whoever's left, which is always a bit of a scary situation to trade up for, even if it's the one that you really like. Right. So if you're a Patriots fan right now, you're praying that Chris Sims and Lance Zierlein and I forget who else has put it out there today are, speaking not just from an uninformed opinion, but something that they may have heard where San Francisco's in love with Mac Jones. And that is an absolute win for the Patriots and an absolute loss for the 49ers. And I'm here for both of those things.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine, like when he tweeted that out, I was like, who? Mac, right. Mac what? Mac, what are we doing? I mean, that's insane, and Murph, I agree.
And the one thing I agree, the one thing that is worth noting, him and Kyle Shanahan go way back. They're like really good friends. So he framed his tweet in the framing of, this is what I think might happen, but that might be a situation where he's heard Kyle Shanahan loves Mac Jones and he just wants to get that out there early. Right. I don't think so. I would still be shocked if it happened, but if you want to hold on to some hope until draft day, that's your thread right there.
Right. So we'll talk about what Spag said in a minute because when we get into the Jimmy G conversation, I think that's going to be important. But I think for me personally, it's about who they look at, right? Who are they getting? Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is it going to be Justin Fields? To me, if you're drafting that guy, if you're giving up that many assets to go up and get him, he should be starting on day one, right? Like you're bringing him in to be the starter day one. Here we go, right? And San Fran keeps talking about Jimmy G and all this other stuff. And what are you going to say, right? You have no leverage. If you say, oh yeah, we're moving on for Jimmy G. Well, now everyone's like, well, we'll give you a 7th. I'll give you a 7th rounder for him. Sure. What the hell, and so that's the issue. Right. And so, it's interesting. So, and he's right about the Niners. The Niners have been talking about it for like weeks.
Yeah.
trying to, talking to 4, talking to 5, now finally figuring out a 3. So I think they were desperate to get up there, and whoever that guy is, they're gonna see. So, but it's a good point that they may not trade with us. They may say, we have guys, right? Atlanta says, no, we got the guy we want. And now, if you're Cincinnati, or especially if you're Atlanta, if you weren't taking a quarterback anyways, Atlanta's sitting back like, this is amazing. Quarterback's going to go 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to get the best player left on the board, whoever it is, whoever my number one guy on the board, right? If my number one guy on the board isn't a quarterback, I'm getting my number one guy at number 4.
Yep.
Whoever that might be, whether it's Jamar Chase, whether it's, Penny Sewell, whoever, right? Whoever it is, doesn't matter. You're getting that guy at 4. So that's a win for Atlanta if they don't want to move the deal. Now, again, you got a Godfather offer like Miami did. I mean, like, what the hell? You're going to give me 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick? Sure. Like, I'll move it. But I think that's really that's the question. Again, if it's Mac Jones, oh my God. Mac Jones, if they gave up all that for Mac Jones. And let me tell you something. Here's the thing about Mac Jones, right? Mac Jones checks, and this is where he fits with the Patriots. He checks a lot of boxes, man.
Yes,
he checks an awful lot of boxes, and they keep coming back to
a lot
of
classic QB boxes.
Well, that's it. Well, You know what though? Phil Perry comes back to it over and over and over again, and credit to him for doing it. But like, Belichick talks about like 3 different things that you need. He never mentions athleticism as a quarterback. Never talks about it. And so, I know Murph. I know you're in love with Mac Jones, and you hate Murph's hate of Justin Fields knows no bounds.
Oh no.
But at 15, now I'm not trading up for Mac Jones, but at 15, if the Patriots believe that he's the guy and they want to draft him at 15, then look, I mean, what are you going to do? Like, I trust in Bill. I've put my trust in Bill for 20 years now. I got no choice, right? This is what I'm rolling, right? This is what we're rolling with. And he's not a carbon copy of Brady. No, I mean, he's significantly more athletic than Brady. You saw him run. He's not like super athletic, but he's decently athletic. He's
also nowhere near. He's also, though, doesn't move in the pocket near the way. That's why Brady still works. That's why Brady works to this level this day. Everyone knows that. I don't need to. Teach Patriots fans about it, but
but think about this: like, how did Brady move in the pocket when he was a rookie? Right. Like, realistically, right? It's clearly not as good as it is now, and he was good at it still. Mac Jones, I think, is pretty good at it too. So it's. Again, I mean, here I am talking myself into Mac Jones at 15 when I've been yelling against, screaming against it for the last 2 months.
I've been on record saying that I will talk myself into it if it happens, but until that second where it happens, or really probably the hour or 2 after it happens, I'm completely anti. If they want to trade down and take that chance, that's one thing. But at 15, I think you're just wasting.
No, listen, and that's kind of the thing. But the issue is, right, and as we keep talking about, the issue is this. You have a plan, right? We think that you have a plan, right, at quarterback. Your plan at quarterback's not Cam Newton. I'm sorry. It's not. It's not. Because if it were, you would have given him more than a 1-year deal. Like, that to me is kind of, that's the way I look at it, is that, okay, if your plan is Cam Newton moving forward, why'd you give him a 1-year deal? Right? Like, that's what I'm kind of stuck on, because I don't care who the quarterback is. If he's on a 1-year deal, I'm not sold. Because now, even if he has a great year, well, now what? Now you got to go out and pay him? And then you got to compete against other suitors that want him. And so it's like
the optimistic view on Cam Newton, and this is coming from one of the chief Cam Newton optimists, is that Cam Newton is a path to a plan. If Cam Newton plays great and proves, whoever wrong, and is, looks like Cam Newton of 2018, 2015, and then you extend him 2 to 3 years out, then he becomes the plan. But you still need to see that play on the field, and then you still need to talk extension or re-signing, and then he becomes a plan. He's a path to a plan. Same way Jimmy Garoppolo, as a little segue here, potentially getting released or less ideally traded for would be a path to a plan where that first-round quarterback is the plan now, if you take that.
Right, and that's the thing, right? And so, and again, for me personally, I look at it and say, you know what? Jimmy G, he can, all right, Trey Lance, to me, is the guy. That's the guy I want the Patriots to draft, because
I want Fields. I'm still pretty sure Fields is going to go top 3. I think Lance is the realistic one, and I'm all on board that.
Right. But the thing about Lance, which I like, is that he doesn't have to play. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing, is he doesn't have to play right away. You bring him in, you say, follow Cam and do everything that he does on the field, off the field, with the media, with his teammates, just shadow him and do everything. Right. And so that's the thing. Right. And so you look at it and say, okay, great, we're going to do that. And then he sits behind him. You do a Kansas City, right? You do the Kansas City. Exactly. Where you sit there and say, okay, great, we do the Kansas City, and he plays for a year. Cam goes out, plays well, gets paid next year like Alex Smith did, and we step in with our quarterback of the future, And so, and then it works out for everyone, And if that's the case, it'd be great.
Yep.
Will that happen? I don't know. We'll see. That's going to be a question. And again, it's going to be a question of how bad does Carolina want it? How bad does Carolina want that guy? Because if they want it bad enough, they'll go out and get him, right?
And we keep pushing back the Jimmy G talk. I just want to bring up one more thing before that. A couple weeks ago, last Wednesday on the Pat's Pulpit Mock Draft Show, nice little plug again.
When is that?
It's Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on wherever you're watching now. We'll be there again. But we talked about a trade up to 4. This is obviously before we even knew that this trade happened. But we talked about a trade up to 4. And the deal was something like 15, 46, and next year's first. And the majority of the chat thought that was too much. Right. And you look at the trade that just got made today, that might not be enough. That's probably like what you're starting at if you're trying to get there from 15 now. So anyone who's been thinking in their mind, oh, yeah, we give up 15, 46, what's the other one, 96, 98?
Yeah.
We go get the quarterback of the future from Atlanta, then you need to start adjusting that. And if you're not comfortable with this year's first, next year's first, and more, you're not going to get to 4 right now.
Well, all right. So here's the thing. So you can't read this, but this is like I had done a ton of research on an article. I was literally going to start this afternoon.
Yep.
About how the Patriots probably have to give up less than we think to move up to draft a quarterback because if you look at the recent history, the trades that have been made, right? And just even I just looked at 2017 and 2018. Now I went all the way back 20 years to see, quarterbacks that were drafted and whatnot. Interestingly enough, in the last 20 years, only twice have 4 quarterbacks been taken in the top 15, 2011, which is a whole bunch of crap. And then 2018, which was Donald, Allen, Rosen, and Baker. So, but here's what happened. Okay. Donald in 2018, to go from 6 to 3, they traded 6, 37, 49, and a 2019 second. Okay. That's what they went from 6 to 3. So that's a decent amount. Allen, to go from 12 to 7, they traded 12, 53, and 56. Not too much, right? Like 2 second rounders, but whatever. Rosen, to move from 15 to 10, they gave up 15, 79, and 152, which is like nothing. And so that's the thing. So and even you go back to Mahomes to go from 27 to 10. Hey, what's up, Josh? Thanks, buddy. To go from 27 to 10, they gave up 27, 91 in their first round pick the next year. And then to go from 25 to 12, they gave up 25 and the 18 first for Watson. Right. So when you start looking at it and you're like, they're not giving up that much to move up and get these guys. And so historically, I was like, well, maybe they don't have to give up that much, right?
Right.
But it seems like that might not be the case anymore, right? I mean, when
recent precedence is always going to take over, and they just slap precedence down on the table today.
Right. No, and that's really what it comes down to. Because if you're Atlanta, how do you justify not taking a massive deal for 4?
You could take like next year's first and a third this year or something, and historically that's not a bad deal for you, and you're just going to get laughed at this year.
Right. And that's so it's interesting, it's really fascinating, man, when they, and Mav says it, with an NBA like trade, which is true because, that's the type of thing you usually see getting thrown around the NBA. We're like, we'll throw a bunch of second round, bunch of first round picks because they're useless anyways. And it's like, well, in the NFL, they're really, really, really important.
Yep.
And they're like, we'll just trade them all. Who the hell cares, And so it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And if you're from a Patriots perspective now, I think you have to be hoping that the guy drops to 7. I think that draft night, you look at it and say, okay, let's see what happens, right? If Lance drops to 7, yep, Carolina, we're gonna have to compete with Carolina for sure. But let's see if we can get up there. See if we can get there 15, and even if it's 15, 46 in next year's first, even if that's it, and you really feel that that's the guy, go get him.
And I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think you would also be there's a world where you're on board with moving up to 4. If you look at what the Patriots historically do, though, I think especially now that cost is out there, 4 is you probably just take it off the table. I think you're completely right. I think if the Patriots are going to make a move, they have to drop to 7. I think you've nailed it here.
Well, and Brian's right too that Washington wants a QB too. So that's the other team you have to compete with. They're 19.
They're the only team that could potentially make a move for a quarterback that you will beat out right now.
Right. Correct. Yeah, because Denver has 9. If Denver wants to move up, if Carolina wants to move up, they both have better first-round picks than you. And the Saints also, but they're 28, so they have nothing.
You could throw the Bears in the mix. They're a pick later than Washington.
That's true. They're the 20th too. But you can outbid those.
Carolina and Denver are the teams that you would need to then add a pick onto to beat their offer. If you and Washington or Chicago or New Orleans offer the same thing, you're winning that trade.
Correct. Yep, exactly. And that's really what it comes down to, is that from a Patriots perspective, it's all about what do you have to give up to get where you want to go. And so, look, I mean, I don't want to give up too much, but if they really, and this is where it comes down to trusting and believing in Bill Belichick. If they really believe he's the next guy, you got to do what you got to do. Go get him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the way it is. So, you know what I mean? So we'll see.
There's been like 3 quarterbacks in the past 20 years who has been franchise guys that come cheap. This is just, we've been spoiled with Tom Brady. This is just how it works.
Right. And that's it. I mean, that's really what
you're
it
going to find the next
right?
guy. You're almost definitely going to need to be doing something like this, or you're going to need to be so bad that you don't have to do something like this.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Mac Jones at 15 is looking awfully, after seeing this trade and knowing what it's going to take to get up there, looking awfully tempting to Mac Jones at 15, if that's who they like. Now, again, I don't know, but someone mentioned Kellen Mond earlier. Maybe they like Kellen Mond. Maybe they'll take him in the 2nd or 3rd round. But again, like if they have a plan, if they have a real plan. So Jamie Newman, I think less so. Again, Newman could learn under Newton, right, for a year, but that's I have a really hard time taking Jamie Newman before the 5th round or so. I mean, the way he looked at the Senior Bowl and the fact he didn't play last year, there's a lot of things where I'm like, yikes, like that's just scary.
That's a situation where we'll finally segue into this Jimmy talk, where if Jimmy Garoppolo gets cut, we'll stay on the happy path to Jimmy Garoppolo, because I know neither of us want to trade for him in that contract. Right. If Jimmy Garoppolo gets cut, gets brought in as competition this year for Cam Newton, then that's where you start looking at a Kellen Mond, a Jamie Newman, that late day 2, early day 3 type, where you sit him behind, similar to Stidham, let him and Stidham battle it out. You figure out who you're going to look at as the potential developmental quarterback of the future. Whoever wins between a Cam Newton and Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter this year, maybe the starter next year, depending on how things go, and then you go from there. Right.
Oh, that's a good point here by Mav too about being, not showing the aggressiveness. But I will say he's been awfully aggressive already, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe they're talking about maybe not super aggressive at the quarterback position. Maybe he wanted to be super aggressive at the quarterback position, and he just wasn't able to be, right? And it just is what it is, right? I mean, like you can't force it. I will say with the Jimmy G situation, this is where it gets really interesting with Jimmy G, because the question is going to be, how much do you want him, right? Are you willing to trade for him? To me, if I'm Jimmy G and I'm going to have to renegotiate my deal anyways, which he's going to, right? I know Brian's like, well, he's only getting paid $25 million. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. His team, the team that he currently plays for, just traded 3 first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick to replace him. No one's paying $26 million for that guy. It's not happening. So wherever he goes, he's going to have to renegotiate his deal. If I'm Jimmy G and that's the case, I'm saying, hey, San Fran, go pound sand, buddy. Either you're going to pay me my $26 million or you're going to cut me, and then I'm going to let people have a bidding war on me without having to give up assets to get me, because he has the no trade clause. And so that's the thing for me where I look at it and say, if I'm Jimmy G, I'm either accepting a trade and not renegotiating my deal, or I'm saying in San Francisco, cut me, because I'll go find a deal somewhere else. And so San Fran could certainly play hardball with it, and they could certainly sit there and say, okay, yep, you want to play like that? Great. We'll cut you, but we're not cutting you until, whatever, June 15th or whatever the case may be, right? But if I'm Jimmy G, I'm not accepting a deal, because why would I? Why would I? And from his perspective, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference, right? Like, it's like, what the hell difference does it make? I'm going to go somewhere and have to renegotiate my deal when I could be a free agent. And then who knows, right? Maybe someone's willing to pay more for me. And so that's where I look at it and just say, like, it's kind of silly,
And in regards to potentially trading him, first of all, I don't think either of us believe on face value the reports that they are locked into keeping him next year already, right? There's a path where if
what are you going to say?
Right. If they were to take like a Trey Lance, who can probably use a year, maybe I'll believe it a little bit more at that point. But all you're going to say right now is he's our guy. He's our guy right now. The right now is doing all of the heavy lifting there. We saw it with Josh Rosen a few years ago. But in terms of Jimmy G, if they are willing to keep him around for a year, obviously that's a bit of a lame duck situation for him. But if the plan is to have him start, his stock really hasn't ever been lower. He didn't play well when he played last year, and then he got hurt as he seemingly always does. Right. The last thing we saw of him was him overthrowing a wide open receiver to lose the Super Bowl. Right. Really. Yeah. So if these reports are to be taken at face value that they want to keep him for a year and then go from there, he can play this year, rebuild some of his stock, hit free agency, and have more of a market versus having to accept this kind of mid-level quarterback contract that we've started to see develop. Because for the past 5-10 years, it's really become either you're a rookie contract or you're like 25-30 million a year quarterback, even if you're bad. Right. Now, with the Cam Newton deal last year into the Cam Newton deal this year, Jameis Winston deal, Andy Dalton deal, we're starting to see that middle tier of quarterback form again. Right. So best case scenario right now for Jimmy is he lands in that middle tier. If he comes out and has a solid year, gets the 49ers back to the playoffs, they make a little bit of a push, he could reach free agency next year or a trade and renegotiate a massive contract again. Right. So he honestly, as much as bad as it sounds that he's, they just gave up all these assets to replace him, he's in a decent spot because either he's going to find a role for one of the teams that miss out on a quarterback, or he's going to play out a year, get a chance to regain some value, and then see what he's got next year. And that no trade clause gives him all the cards right now.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that the no trade clause allows him to kind of do whatever he wants, right? And we don't care what you want. He could say to San Fran, I don't care what you want, right? And I think that, so the question now becomes, and you're right, but here's the thing for me. If you're the San Francisco 49ers GM, right? If you're John Lynch, you're going to say to your owner, I'm giving up my entire future to go get a quarterback. Oh, and by the way, we're still paying our starting quarterback $26 million this year. How do you justify that to your owner? You know what I mean? Like, because okay, whatever, it's not real money. Well, it's real money to the freaking owner.
I think the justification would be, here's our plan. We have a plan in place. Right. This isn't just we're gonna play with it. Jimmy is our guy this year. While we still think we can contend, we think that Trey Lance, I think him with Jimmy makes the most sense if you're looking for a bridge situation. So I'll use him here. We think Trey Lance is special and is going to be the future. We also know that he was a 19-year-old sophomore starting for the first time in his only full season and hasn't played in a year. We would like him to sit for a year. We have seen what we can do with Jimmy, and then in a year we move on from Jimmy. Trey Lance takes over, and we've got our guy for the next decade plus. Right. You sell your owner on that plan, and then it looks different. But it's entirely possible that the owner doesn't want to pay up that type of money, especially with everything going on and owners losing money right now. Right. It could go either way there.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. I mean, it is and that's the argument you can make for Jimmy G staying there, right? The guy that we're taking isn't ready yet, and so we're going to hold on to Jimmy G. He's going to learn for a year, and then we'll go from there. But again, it's like, I don't know, whatever. I mean, again, they can do whatever they want, right? But it just seems like you want to get rid of him now. It doesn't really make sense to have him on the roster, and so we'll see. But you know what I mean? Oh yeah, we got someone spamming the chat. I was like, wait a second, that's not. And I'm like, no, that's not true.
Last thing on Jimmy G, I think we have a question. What do we even gain with Jimmy G besides a pipe dream of being Brady? I'm not the Jimmy G guy. The upside to Jimmy G is that he's another starter. Right. He's another potential starter to compete with Cam Newton. If you're not sold on Cam Newton, that excites you. If you're me or Brian or in the Cam Newton camp, I think that they're already fine at veteran quarterback. Right. But if Jimmy G gets cut, I have no issues bringing him in because, one, I think Cam beats him out. And if he doesn't, then they get the better quarterback. Get the best quarterback. I'm fine with it. Take all the shots you need. So the path there is that you think Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Cam Newton in the short-term future. Maybe, the eternal optimist, the high-end optimist believes that he just needs to be kind of re-unlocked by New England. and you have a long-term starter there that you at least initially get cheap again.
Right.
That's the case. That's not the case that I personally believe in, but that's the case for bringing him in.
Right. No, I agree. And so this is, and one thing I want to show here is Brian says Darnold is still the wild card, which I agree. So here's the interesting thing, right? And this is where we can kind of evolve this into not just Jimmy G, but Jimmy G, Sam Darnold, and Gardner Minshew. Those are three, in my opinion, starting level quarterbacks that are on teams right now that are not going to use them next year. I mean, the Jets, who the heck knows what the Jets are going to do? Maybe they'll take a quarterback, maybe they won't. Like, who the heck knows, right? I think they'd be dumb not to. And my biggest reasoning for that is because forget about Darnold. Forget about what you think about Darnold. My biggest reasoning for them drafting a quarterback at 2 is because you reset the timeline again, right? Sam Darnold is done after this year. He has now. You'll probably pick up his 5th-year extension, but even if you do, he's no longer on a cheap contract. Now you're going to have to pay him, right? So it's like reset the clock, right? You're not going to the Super Bowl anyways. Reset the clock. Take a guy at 2, and and if it's Wilson, if you think Wilson is a sure thing, then you take Wilson at 2 and you trade Darnold, and whatever you get for him, it doesn't matter because you're resetting that clock on how much you can get, right? On the on how long you can go without paying, right, for that guy. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. So Darnold is there. He's going to get traded somewhere. Someone that needs a quarterback is going to end up with Sam Darnold. That's big. Okay. Gardner Minshew is still there. It doesn't make any sense for Jacksonville to keep Gardner Minshew. It makes zero sense.
He's on his way out.
Gardner Minshew. So 100%. You got to trade him. So now you might only get a 4th or 5th round pick for him, but so what? And you might get something more from him. You never know, right? Especially with him being on a super cheap contract right now. You could get a 3rd round pick for Gardner, maybe for Gardner Minshew if a team looks at him or looks at him as a starter. Maybe that's the case, right? Okay, great. We get Gardner Minshew. So that's another starting quarterback off the board. And then the last one, of course, is Jimmy G. So you got 3 potential starting quarterbacks that could be on the move to new teams this year.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Chicago supposedly already has QB1. They already tweeted it out.
Right.
So they supposedly already have QB1. Do one of those guys end up in Washington? Right? Does Washington say, you know what? Cool, we're good here, right? And then you kind of go from there. So it's like that's one of those interesting things where you look at it and say, who's going to end up where, right? And where are those guys going to go? I thought Darnold to San Fran made a ton of sense. I thought that was the landing spot for Sam Darnold. Obviously, that's not going to happen anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see where Darnold goes, and what the Jets. I mean, I guess what the Jets do. But like I said, I mean, like just draft a freaking quarterback, you idiots. Like, don't be dumb, right. Or do be dumb. I mean, you're the Jets. Like, do whatever you want. I don't care. But like, if I'm a Jets fan, I'm screaming for them to take a quarterback at 2 and just get whatever you want. Get whatever you can for Sam Darnold. If it's a 3rd or 4th round pick, so what? Just move on.
Yep. And among the group, I think Gardner Minshew is the easy, most ideal option. 1, because of his price tag. 2, because of likely the cost to acquire him. 3, I think he's shown the most as an NFL starter of the 3. Jimmy G obviously had the team success. I think as a quarterback, especially as like a bridge quarterback, I think Gardner Minshew has the most ideal, and he's the youngest.
Right.
I think he might not be younger than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's stupid young for when he got drafted, but they're in the same age range, and Gardner Minshew shown more on a much cheaper deal at this point. If you were going to bring Gardner Minshew in, and then you want to use 15, trade back from 15 even, and add a player that can help you this year at a position outside quarterback, continue to add the wide receiver room, whatever, and then you have Minshew versus Cam. The idea of Minshew for more than a year, maybe even 2 years versus Stidham, of course.
Had to throw it in there.
And then you're kicking the can, but you're in a situation where kicking the can at quarterback isn't necessarily a bad thing because you have Cam Newton, former MVP. You have Gardner Minshew, very young, established starter with a lot of starts for an undrafted or 6th round pick. I think it was 6th round pick of his age, extremely experienced. And you have Jarrett Stidham. And now you have assets still moving forward where you can, and cap space moving forward where you can afford to take a hit in draft stock to trade up for someone if you still need to.
Right.
So
no, I agree.
They're in free agency. It just all comes back down to this free agency period. For as much as they spent, as much as some of the actual talent that they brought in can be questioned, they put themselves in a position to have flexibility to figure out the quarterback position, which is what you need. You never want to be backed into a corner where you need to figure out a quarterback position and there's only 1 or 2 choices.
Right. Because when you do that, you end up trading your entire future for a quarterback like San Francisco did, and look, maybe San Francisco says, hey, we have a chance. But see, this is why the whole San Francisco thing doesn't make any sense. When they're healthy, right? When they're healthy right now, they're a really good team when they're healthy.
Mhm.
So if they were to get a veteran quarterback that could just, even Sam Darnold made sense, even Gardner Minshew made, like, put a quarterback in there that isn't going to blow it for you, right? And as long as your guys stay healthy, you're going to be pretty damn good. And instead, they just like, I don't know. I don't get it. It didn't make sense to me. And look, maybe they prove everyone wrong. Maybe Justin Fields or whoever they get at 3 ends up being a Hall of Famer, and it was a great pick, right?
If they get the guy, then if they get the guy, whatever they give up doesn't matter, right? Because they got the guy. That's all that matters. And to kind of wrap up here, what they did makes the Patriots' life a little bit harder. It also makes the Patriots' life a little bit easier in the sense that you now have more veteran options to give you further draft flexibility. And everything that they've done this year signals, one, we want to contend this year, or at least compete again this year. Not necessarily contend. I don't think they're quite contenders, but they want to compete again this year, and they want to maintain that flexibility moving forward to continue to figure out what the future is at quarterback.
Right.
And even though they were never going to get 3, this makes getting to 4 more expensive. So maybe it takes, if they're really in love with Lance or Fields and that's their guy, this really kind of makes their life a little bit harder. But again, on the flip side, gives them that veteran flexibility where now Jimmy Garoppolo, even if it's not this year, is almost assuredly available by next year.
Yeah.
And they can look towards those cheaper veteran options if they want to.
Right. Right. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And look, I've been saying since free agency started, I've been saying you should go out and get a rookie, right? You should trade up and go get a guy. And I do believe that. I will say a guy like Minshew makes a lot of sense, though. To bring him in, compete against Cam, he's still got 2 years left on his deal, I think, at a very, very cheap cost. And so you say, okay, let's bring him in, let's compete, and then we'll trade one of them. Maybe not even trade one of them, but whatever. Minshew ends up being the backup to Cam or whatever the case may be, right?
Yep.
And so, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then what it allows you to do, instead of having to jump to 7, instead of having to take Mac Jones at 15, right? Say Mac Jones drops all the way to 15. And now Washington's like, oh my God, we have to get him.
Exactly. Yep.
Or New Orleans, like, we have to get this guy. So you say, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll trade you 15. Just give us your first round pick next year. Right. And so that's the issue, right? Is where you look at it and say, now we have the ability to move back, and we don't have to worry about our quarterback situation so much because we have a young piece at quarterback. We have Cam at quarterback. They can both compete. And then one of those guys, we feel comfortable enough to get us to a position where we can compete for the AFC East, right? And so, and I think that to me is a great position to be in. And like you said, it's interesting because this trade affects the Patriots in positive ways or negative ways, right? It's like one of those where you're like, yeah, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not so much. So, but anyways, but man, I've never seen this before. I've never seen a team
this early. This is
move
insane.
Back like this early, right? I've never seen a team. What Miami did today was unbelievable. They moved all the way back to 12 and then moved up to 6. It was crazy. So maybe he moves up in draft 13. So that would be ridiculous. So, anyways, but this is great, man. I love doing these quick online shows. Well, not quick. We went for 50 minutes here, but the online shows are fun, and these aren't even not even gonna be a podcast, probably just a quick online show for the people that are out here. So we appreciate you guys popping in. Yeah.
And I think final quick thoughts are if you were hoping to get up to maybe 4, you're in a little bit rougher shape. But if you were just looking to have options at the quarterback position, this almost helps the Patriots a little bit. Yeah, I think a good takeaway to have from it.
I agree 100%. So,
all right, Pat, I appreciate you hanging out with me. If you guys see it right there. If you're not following Pat on Twitter, follow him at @plane_Pats. Of course, make sure to follow @Pats_Pulpit, or sorry, @Pats_Pulpit no underscore as well. Follow Pats_Pulpit on Twitch, and don't follow me. But appreciate you guys hanging out, and we'll have a great night, and we'll be back at least by next Wednesday, unless the Patriots make something insane again.
Yeah, thanks for coming through, guys. Thanks for keeping the chat nice, and chat was flying today. It was great. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
guys.
Have a good weekend, everybody.